Hi, hello, fifth graders. I hope everyone's doing really well today, this Monday of Holy Week. It's a really special week, and I hope that you get a chance to do some special things. I know I'm sort of disappointed because some of the normal events at my church have been canceled, especially Journey of the Cross, which is one of my favorite events. But there's always next year, and it's kind of interesting as we enter into the Passover time for us to spend time kind of holed up in our houses, just like the Jews had to do during Passover, when they were commanded by the Lord to stay in their house. So it's kind of an interesting time for us. We can think about Passover and Easter in a slightly different way than we have before. Anyways, the reason why I'm coming to you this morning is to go over Hatchet guided reading for chapters 8 and 9, which you should have completed, and just to talk to you about Hatchet a little bit. This is one of my favorite parts because this was when he finally gets fire, and you're like, oh, like, I don't know about you, but I was like, oh, whew, he's going to survive. He's going to be okay. Like that's how I felt. Once he had fire, I'm like, all right, okay, this kid's good. He's going to be all right. That doesn't mean he doesn't have any challenges ahead of him, but once he had fire, you know that he can have safety and that he can have nutritious food once he learns how to kill things or cook things and save water. So get your study guides out and let's just go over the guided practice. I want to make sure that you have all your blanks filled in. And if you have something similar to what I wrote, but it's not exactly the same word, that's okay. Like I said, sometimes shelter and cave are interchangeable. And there's a couple spots where there were a couple different options. So chapter 8 is when on number 1, Brian wakes up to a brushing or a slithering sound at his feet in the shelter or the cave. Kind of scary. This is sort of a scary part. And then number 2, Brian tries to kick whatever it was, but instead the animal, which we later find out is a porcupine, puts hundreds of needles into his leg. Maybe not hundreds, but what feels like hundreds. I was reading it, I was looking for an exact number, and I didn't find an exact number. And the guided reading has a number there. So perhaps I just accidentally skimmed over that part. I don't know. So if you found an exact number in chapter 8, please comment below so that the rest of us can have that number, okay? But I just put hundreds. And when he pulls them out, I don't think it really equated to hundreds, but it felt like hundreds at the time. That's where I saw a number. Number 3, Brian pulls them out and then figures out the first rule of survival. Feeling sorry for yourself does not work. This is true in life. This is a life lesson for all of us. Feeling sorry for yourself doesn't work. It doesn't accomplish anything, and it doesn't help. So that's why pity parties that we have for ourselves need to be short and very few. And so if you find yourself having a pity party, especially now, because here we are doing all this hard stuff, trying to work at home. I don't like teaching at home. I want to be in my classroom. I want to be with you guys. It's not fair because I have to do all this hard parts of my job, but I don't get any of the hugs. But if I sit here and feel sorry for myself, it doesn't do me any good. It doesn't help any. It's not going to make anything better. In fact, I think feeling sorry for yourself actually makes things worse because then you start to feel even more depressed and you're dwelling on the negative instead of the positive. So Brian kind of sucks it up and is like, okay, feeling sorry for myself isn't going to help. I still have to survive. So Brian falls asleep. Number 4, Brian has a dream about his father and his friend Terry. Number 5, his father is trying to tell him something that Brian doesn't understand. Number 6, Terry is at the park for a barbecue, and he's trying to tell Brian that he needs a fire. And then Brian wakes up and is like, well, duh, I know I need fire. I mean, obviously, anyways. So number 7, the dream only makes Brian more upset because he knew he needed a fire, but he didn't know how to start one. And then this is when something clicks in his head, number 8, when Brian realizes that his hatchet had made a spark when he threw it at the porcupine or at the wall. You could have put the wall. It hit the wall, but he thrown it at the porcupine. This will make fire. So the porcupine coming, and even though he got quilled and he's going to have a sore leg now, and he has to deal with these puncture wounds. It actually helped him because if he hadn't thrown that hatchet and seen that spark, which wouldn't have happened in the day, he wouldn't have noticed the spark. But since it was dark, he saw the spark, and now he's like, I have a way to make fire. However, he realizes that it's a little bit harder than he initially thought. So chapter 9, number 1, Brian cannot start a fire because the sparks just die. So he initially starts having some problems. Number 2, Brian tries to start twigs and grass on fire, but no luck. So first he's using twigs and grass. Then number 3, Brian shreds the bark from the birch trees to make a little home for the sparks. Now, you have all seen birch trees. We have them here in Pennsylvania. So they are the trees that are white and light gray, and they're usually real tall and straight. And they have that white like bark that you can sort of peel off. And if you rub your hands off it, you'll get like this weird white residue on your hands. But the bark is kind of papery. And I think we might even have a birch tree on the property at Newcastle Christian Academy. But I know there's some like in the park here, in our local park where I live. I like birch trees because in the wintertime, they're really pretty because they stand out against all the other trees because they have this bright white, kind of creamy white colored bark. And it's usually kind of speckled with gray as well, but it's predominantly white, which is unusual because most trees have brown bark and very dark brown bark. And the bark from other trees is real thick and chunky. But the birch trees have this papery, thin sort of bark that you could actually peel off. And if you happen to know where a birch tree is in your local park, or if you're over at the property at Newcastle Christian Academy, you can find it. Go ahead and go over to it and just kind of pull a little strip off. You're not going to hurt the tree because if it's peeling, it's going to peel off eventually anyways. I mean, don't peel a lot of it, but just get yourself an idea kind of what he's working with. But he ends up actually having to tear that into little pieces and makes a little nest for the sparks, which he calls them a home. Okay. So number 4, once he had a home for the sparks, Brian then hit the hatchet on the wall, the rock wall, to make the sparks that then would fall into the home. Then to add oxygen, he blew on the sparks in the home, and that made a fire. He then adds sticks to make the fire bigger. And remember, the video I had you guys watch last week shows a person building a fire from sparks, which was probably a little bit of a spoil. I probably should have saved that video until after you read the chapters. It was a little bit of a spoiler. But anyways, all right, so where am I? Number 5, Brian's new friend is named Fire, and he is also very hungry. So he has to feed the fire. He realizes that he has to keep the fire fed in order to keep it alive. So now I feel like things start to really get good. Things are starting to heat up, and Brian is starting to get a grasp on his surroundings and actually starting to really like survive as opposed to just exist. And of course he has some problems. And I want you to pay attention as you're reading now to the way Brian names things, okay? So he names days and events, and he names places and animals. He comes up with different names for things. Gut cherries, of course, is one of the first things that he names. Then he names his shelter home, and now he has named his friend Fire. And then he talks about things like first luck, the day of first fire, and things like this as he's naming things to try to make sense of his environment. So that's one of the things that I don't really ask you about in the guided reading, but I want you to pay attention because I just think that it's fascinating and interesting the way he names these things so that he can narrate it and keep track of things in his brain and keep everything kind of organized. So anyways, I hope you're enjoying this book, and I hope you're enjoying the nice weather that we've been having lately. It's really nice to see the sunshine. I'm recording this on Friday afternoon, and so I can't wait to go outside for a little bit. My kids are already outside playing because they get their work done way before I get my work done. But you'll be watching this on Monday morning, so which is the beginning of our Holy Week. And I hope that you are having a great day and that you have a wonderful week and a wonderful Easter. And I'll see you again soon. Bye.